You may be wondering, why did these groups of records come into existence, and how did they get here in our archives? We all make records in our everyday life. Think about some of the paperwork you keep for things like your university studies or the organizations that you belong to. You might keep papers about the licensing and healthcare of your pets, or files of tax records. Personal documents, just like those found in official archival collections, are a record of something that happened, and as such, they can give insights about how and why an event occurred. Not all records are worthy of long-term preservation. It is doubtful that the historians of tomorrow will care about your pet getting a rabies shot, but something like the records of your parents' small family farm operation might be. It is estimated that archives only preserve about 1 or 2% of all the records ever created. Typically, there comes a point when records get so old or outdated, they are no longer of regular use for the purpose that they were created for to the people or agency that created them. But, despite this, they might contain a wealth of historical information and thus become useful for this new reason. Sometimes, when people recognize this situation, the records are donated to an archive. Generally, there are some things you would be less likely to find in a publicly accessible archive. For example, the records of a still active business, or proprietary information like Coca-Cola's soda recipe. However, stuff like that is probably preserved in private company archives accessible to employees. Besides intellectual property, people often do not donate records that are personally embarrassing to them or their family, or that might expose them to legal issues. Archivists do worry about people selectively removing records before donating them. Additionally, archives are often more likely to have records from those of a higher socioeconomic status, and less likely to have records of historically underrepresented people. The vast majority of archivists are actively working to reverse these trends, but it is a slow process impacted by many widespread societal forces. However, it's an important issue because what records get saved and which do not have a strong impact on what perspectives shape widely accepted and published historical narratives. When archivists receive a donation of records, much work needs to be done to ready them for researchers. If the records have been in storage, sometimes they require cleaning. Archivists almost always rehome the materials in acid-free archival boxes and folders for long-term preservation. If records come in disarray, archivists will perform tasks like grouping like materials, such as letters, financials, and press releases, together, and then sorting them by date to make them easier for historians to find and use. Sometimes archivists choose to keep the records in mostly the same arrangement in which they arrived in order to preserve the creator's original order. This is because, if there is a logical arrangement, that in itself is a form of historical information and provides insight about their creation and how they were originally used. The order materials are in can also provide important contextual information. For example, information on one document might help a record following it make more sense. In fact, the second record might not be very useful without the information on the document before it. So, it can be very important to keep certain materials together. This is why, when looking through folders in archival manuscript collections, it is important that researchers keep the pages in order. Archives keep materials together by creator because knowing who made a record and why is essential to understanding it. For example, historians would approach a document about environmental regulation from a conservation group very differently than they would one on the same topic from an industrial lobbyist. A downfall of organizing materials by creator is that there could be numerous places to find records on the same topic. For example, the Menninger papers contain documents about Hmong immigration, but there are also several more places to find information on that topic in our collection, like in oral histories, vertical files, primary and secondary books, published reports, student papers, photographs, and naturalization records, to name a few. Another tricky aspect is that a collection's connection to a topic might not be readily apparent just from its name. For example, if you were looking for information on Wisconsin's early logging industry, you might not necessarily know to look in the Hickson family papers based on that name alone. However, this is why archivists put together finding aids and make them searchable online in library catalogs. Also, researchers should keep in mind that a single collection can contain information on various topics. For example, in addition to Hmong immigration, the Menninger papers contain records on topics like cigarette vending machines, the death penalty, fireworks, fallout shelters, the legal drinking age, gambling, zebra mussels, and more, because these are all things he was concerned about as a mayor and state representative. Sometimes, when looking for information in an archive, it is helpful to think about who would have compiled information or been concerned about the topic that you are looking for.